Hey guys, Robert Bell here, Brooks Equipment. I want to talk to you today about the Paycheck Protection Program. Time out, time out. Don't stop watching. It's not what you think. Although there are still funds available, up to 120 billion or 40% of the funds 2 weeks into the second phase are still up for grabs. I want to talk to you today about those that have already received their funding and talk to you about forgiveness of those loans. Did you know that the entire Paycheck Protection Program loan is subject to forgiveness under certain conditions? But you must seek forgiveness after you spent the funds in order to qualify for forgiveness. How do you do that? We're going to show you how. You know, when you accept that Paycheck Protection Program loan, you do so with the understanding that any part of that loan that's not forgiven, you will have to pay back. So we've got a webinar, a short webinar designed to walk you through the steps to seek forgiveness and what those funds can and cannot be used for. Again, this webinar is hosted by our own Brandon Stevens. Take it away, Brandon.
Thanks, Robert. As always, thank you for taking your time to watch this video update on the PPP loan forgiveness. We'll keep this brief because we know how valuable your time is. So under the Paycheck Protection Program, FEDs that employ less than 500 employees are eligible for special low-interest loans for 2.5 times their monthly payroll to cover their major operating expenses, including and limited to wages, rent, mortgage interest, and utility payments. If you've received a PP loan or are considering applying for this loan, qualifying expenditures will be forgiven if you do not reduce your payroll by cutting hours or eliminating positions. Here is what you need to keep in mind to qualify for loan forgiveness. PPP loans are made through an SBA-approved bank or other lender. The entire PPP loan is subject to forgiveness under certain conditions, but you must seek forgiveness after you've spent the money in order to qualify for forgiveness. When you accept a PPP loan, you do so with the understanding that any part of the loan that is not forgiven, you will have to pay back. So what are the permitted uses? The funds from this loan are only permitted to be used for certain expenses. An expense that is permitted but is not forgivable is interest on debt in place as of February 15, 2020. All other permitted uses may be forgiven and include the following uses of money: salary, wages, commissions up to $100,000 per employee, benefits including vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, state and local taxes on compensation, but not federal taxes, rent or mortgage interest, and utilities. Now, on the other hand, there are expenses that you are not permitted to use the loan money on. These rules do not allow the PPP funds to be used on the following: any salary over $100,000, payroll outside the United States, employer federal or FICA tax credits, independent contractors, 1099s, mortgage or debt principal, or the Employer Families First Corona Response Act credits, otherwise known as FFCRA, Employee Paid Leave. Now, the consequences of using this loan money on any of these items is that it will not be forgiven and you may have to immediately pay that money back. Well, what if you make an offer and your employer refuses rehire? You will not lose the PPP loan forgiveness if you make a good faith written offer to rehire a laid off employee, which means the same hours and the same wages. You must also have documented evidence that the person turning you down on your offer of employment. Under these conditions, you can exclude that employee from the loan forgiveness reduction calculation required under the Act. This is according to a recent Treasury Department interpretation. Now, to be forgiven, what are the requirements? In addition to using the loan funds only for permitted uses, you must adhere to some additional requirements. Payroll costs must make up 75% of the amount forgiven. Non-payroll costs can make up no more than 25% of the amount forgiven: rent, mortgage, interest, and utilities. To receive full forgiveness, you must retain or rehire by June 30th all full-time equivalent employees according to the baseline used to establish your loan, except for any fully documented instances in which an employer refused the rehire offer. Now, the amount forgiven will also be reduced in proportion to any reduction in your employee's salaries or wages that you made during the 8-week forgiveness period that are greater than 25% of the average amount that employee made during the base period. So let's talk about how the PPP loan will be treated when it comes to taxes. The IRS has ruled that any forgiven part of this loan is exempt from being taxed as discharged debt. This means that you do not have to declare the forgiven part of your loan and income when you file taxes next year for 2020. To get PPP loan forgiveness, you have to apply. You're required to apply to your bank for loan forgiveness at the end of the 8-week period following receipt of your loan. To apply, you must submit the following: the total amount requested to be forgiven, a verification of the number of full-time employee equivalents on payroll, their pay rates, including IRS payroll tax filings, state income, and payroll and unemployment insurance filings, verification of your payments of covered rent, mortgage interest, and utilities, certification from an authorized representative of your company that the supplied documentation is true and that the amount that is being forgiven complies with the PPP guidelines. And your bank is going to be required to make a decision on your application within 60 days for forgiveness. It is extremely important that you create and keep meticulous records of all of your PPP related spending. That means you'll need to track and document everything. If you think something might be relevant, make sure you keep a record. Any part of the loan that is not forgiven must be paid back. As stated previously, any money used for non-permitted uses must be paid back immediately. Those permitted uses that don't qualify for forgiveness will become a 2-year loan at an interest rate of 1% with a 6-month deferment. An example of a permitted use that is not forgivable would be utility costs that push your non-payroll expenses over 25% of the forgivable amount. Another example would be interest on a non-mortgage debt in place on February 15, 2020. It is important to keep in mind the uses of this loan money that are permissible and those that are not permitted so that you are not penalized. Also keep in mind that you'll need to keep accurate records of qualifying expenses that will be forgiven. If you use the PPP loan money for permitted uses and those uses qualify for forgiveness, you'll likely be in good shape to preserve and defend your FED business. Thanks for your time. I hope this was helpful, and I'll hand it back over to Robert.
Thank you, Brandon. We really appreciate the information, and we hope that you'll take the steps necessary to ensure that you follow the protocol to get your loans forgiven. And for those that haven't applied, do so. There's still time. There's still money available to defend and preserve your FED business through applying for that Paycheck Protection Program loan. Once again, thanks from all of us here at Brooks Equipment, and together we will win. See you on the flip side.